Everyone, and welcome back to the Maybe I Can podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Weiss. And today, my guest is Rebecca Whitman. She is a magnetic abundance mentor, a graduate with honors from Princeton University, and author of international best-selling books, Phenomenal Feminine Entrepreneurs, Business Life Universe, and How to Make a Six-Figure Income Working Part-Time. She was ranked in the top 7 entrepreneurs to watch in 2023 in LA Weekly. Rebecca was selected as a Life Coach of the Year by the International Association of Top Professionals. She hosts the top 1% globally ranked Balanced, Beautiful, Abundant podcast. Her philosophy divides life into 7 pillars of abundance, which include spiritual, physical, emotional, romantic, mental, social, and financial. Rebecca helps people achieve balance within these 7 areas so they can experience more fun and freedom in their life. Rebecca, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I was so excited to be on your show that I showed up a half an hour early. So thank you for accommodating my early start.
No problem. Like I said, early is certainly better than late. So it must have been meant to be since I realized you were on early. That in itself was a miracle. So here we are. Let's start with my first question, which I ask everyone is, can you tell us about a time where you went from a defeated, I can't attitude to a more empowered, well, maybe I can?
Yeah, I love this first question. I was in a marriage that I should have never been in. I married someone hoping he would change, like many women do. There's a joke that men marry women hoping they don't change, and women marry men hoping they do. And it was a very just toxic relationship, a lot of fighting, a lot of criticism, a lot of drama. And we were trying to work it out in a couples counseling session. And everything, it was LA, bone broth is in the kitchen, and there's incense, and there's a Buddha, and there's a feng shui fountain. It looked very peaceful, but the actual session was very inflammatory, a lot of yelling, a lot of fighting. And the therapist just stopped and said, okay, stop the yelling. She looked right at me and she said, Rebecca, what do you want? Do you want to be married? And a voice that wasn't mine came through me and it said, I want a life of ease, grace, and spiritual dignity. And I knew as soon as I heard myself say that I had to get out of the marriage. And it was really, really hard because he sued me for spousal support. I was just working in all commission sales, starting at 0 every week. I was paying for his lawyer, my lawyer, paying for him to live because he wouldn't move out of one of my rental properties. And it was stressful, both emotionally because he wouldn't move out. So I was going through this divorce while he was like right in my living quarters. And it was also stressful financially. And I got through it through leaning on my women friends. I got through it through a journal practice that we'll talk more about later. I call it my abundance journal. I got through it through just having faith that I would be okay and that my freedom didn't have a price tag. And so what if I had to pay for everybody's attorney and pay a settlement to get out and all the stuff? And what happened, Debbie, is not only did I get out of the marriage, I ended up having my best financial year ever. And for the first time working in all commission sales, I made over 200,000. And I don't think I've made that much since in that sales job. It was literally my best financial year ever when I was under the most stress. So that is a story of how I got through something that was very tough.
You think that that was your best year ever because of the situation? Were you working harder?
I was not. I think because I leaned in so hard to my practices of writing in the daily abundance journal, going to 12-step meetings, sharing with women, working out, doing all my 7 pillars of abundance. I probably did them harder than I ever had to get through it and not crumble. And I think that is exactly why I had my best financial year ever, because I was actually living my life in these 7 key areas and really just surrendering to on a really deep level, because I didn't know how much this divorce would end up costing me and when the marriage would actually be finalized. And to make it even more challenging, Debbie, as my marriage was unraveling painfully, my dad was dying slowly in a nursing home. So the two events were happening simultaneously. And my dad's funeral was on a Wednesday and my divorce was finalized on a Friday. So as the marriage was unraveling, I'm flying back and forth to Ohio, never knowing which conversation would be my last conversation with my dad. And in one of our last conversations, he asked me to write a book, which I did end up writing to honor his memory. And kind of what you were saying about your late husband, you wrote your book as he was passing. And with my dad, I started the book pretty much a couple months after he died to honor his memory. And he really was the motivation to start my whole coaching practice, because it all started with this book, How to Make a Six-Figure Income Working Part-Time. And in the book, I talk about how I was so resilient to get through my divorce and get through my dad's passing. And that's where I explain my 7 pillars of abundance, which now has led to a coaching business where I empower women to go from burned out to balanced, beautiful, and abundant. So it was that very dark period of my life that led to so much of what I'm doing right now.
It sounds like from your description, you already had those pillars in place prior to divorce, prior to your dad passing, right? Because you said you leaned on those things during a tough time. Had you already had part-time business doing coaching or doing anything at that time?
I did not have any kind of a business like that, but I was living my life very intentionally in these 7 pillars, because when I was in my 20s, I went to a personal growth seminar and they taught us how to set goals within 6 of the pillars. And then I have, up until now, I'm happily married, but before that, I was romantically challenged. So I added romance as another one of the pillars to set goals. And now I have I've been doing this whole practice probably for over 20 years, where I not only set goals every January in these 7 areas of life, I also have affirmations that help me attain my goals in these 7 areas of life. So I was doing that long before my divorce and long before my dad passed. And when I really look back on why I was able to get through it and not fall apart and have not only my best financial year ever, but experience radiant health, experience great friendships, experience travel, all the stuff. I realized it was because I was very intentional in living my life and having affirmations on how to get the results I wanted in these 7 key areas of life.
I can completely relate because for such a long time, I never had those type of practices. And I just let the sea of life take me wherever it was taking me without me being the one in charge of where I was going. I had no goals. I had no direction. It was just every day, just get up and do what you have to do, go to sleep and do it all over again the next day, rinse and repeat, and really no clear direction other than life circumstances, things that I didn't have a choice. And I think when you realize, no, we all have a choice regardless of our circumstances, but it does need to be intentional, right? I mean, it's not just going to
Yeah.
happen because you say you want it to happen. It does require work on your part. So if you, yeah, if you could let's talk a little bit about your 7 pillars of abundance.
Yeah, I would love to. So they are in order of importance. The first one is spirituality, and I'm a big believer in having a morning practice. Every morning, I do the same exact thing. I wake up, I put on my AirPods and listen to something positive from YouTube or a wonderful podcast like yours. Maybe I can. I then have my lemon water. I then have my liquid collagen and other supplements. And then I make a hot cup of coffee or tea. I sit down. I write in my abundance journal, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more later. There's a great story about how I got that. I will read something from spiritual literature, say a quick prayer, and then I'm out the door to the second pillar of abundance, which is fitness. And I really believe that we can build our day around our workout. I don't work out every day, probably 5 or 6 days a week, but it's a really important part of my lifestyle. The third pillar is emotions, and that is just an awareness of my self talk and also how I'm speaking. Am I in a conversation of scarcity or abundance? Am I saying there's not enough money, there's not enough love, there's not enough energy, there's not enough time? Or am I relaxed and knowing I have plenty of money, I have plenty of time, I have plenty of energy, I have plenty of love? So it's always back and forth in my brain. Am I in a scarcity or abundance? And if I find myself in scarcity, which I do go into every day because I'm only human and that's our natural state, I believe, is how can I flip it? And I usually flip it with an affirmation or gratitude. The next pillar of abundance is romantic. And this was my last pillar of abundance to click into place. And having a partner who is supportive and loving is so important. And this has to do with friends too. There's no such thing as neutral energy. Someone's either loving you and uplifting you and building you up, or they're draining you and tearing you down. And I have a zero tolerance policy now after being in several emotionally abusive relationships. I know right away, I can feel it in my body if somebody is not being supportive, and I distance myself. The next pillar after romantic is mental, and that is constantly learning something new. And we are in the golden age of information. There are so many podcasts and audible books and YouTube videos and Zoom workshops. And this is like the golden age, but it's not just self-help. You could be learning a sport or learning how to cook or learning a language or learning a musical instrument. Your brain is like any other muscle in your body. And if you don't use it, then it atrophies. The next pillar is social. And I feel that community is something that's really lacking in modern society, and people have never been lonelier. They are lonely behind their technology. And it's important to seek out community, both online and in person. And finally, financial. And people think that money is the most important thing because we do live in a capitalist society. And obviously, we need to pay our bills. However, if you put all your focus on money and let everything go and let your health go and let your relationships go, what is the point? Like, what is the point of having $1 million if you're hooked up to a IV in the hospital? Or what is the point of having all this money if you are desperately lonely? So it's really important to understand that we don't have to live to work. We can work to live and not put so much focus on money that we neglect these other key areas of life.
So true. Just was lucky enough. I just took a trip to Italy for my 60th birthday.
Oh, congratulations. Happy
Thank you. And boy, they do it right over there, right?
Yeah. That actually was a big change in my life. And when I was in college, I went there twice, once for a summer after freshman year and once for a semester my junior year. And I actually quit tennis because I was a very serious tennis player. By the time I was 8, I was playing national tournaments, and
Wow.
it was a very high stakes situation in my mind. Like, hitting a second serve in the third set was like life or death in my mind.
Yes.
It was so stressful. And I saw how the Italians lived and how much they enjoyed life. And I'm like, I'm not playing tennis anymore. I don't enjoy it. Like, it's not fun for me anymore. And after a 20-year hiatus, I came back to it and now it's finally fun again. But
Oh, how
yeah, the
nice.
Italians and the Europeans, they really know how to enjoy life. And I feel like they are in the flow a lot more than Americans.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was not great as a tourist when you want to be shopping between 1 and 4. You just think to yourself, wow, just picturing what that life must be like and how much more relaxing it is and just enjoying your life. Like you said, I think that even though we are a capitalist society, we do put too much focus on money. It's all about making more money, getting that better job. And like you said, what good is it if you're sick or if you can't enjoy it because all you're doing is working or worrying about where is the next dollar going to come from? So, so in your morning routine, have you ever had a time? Well, tell me about the journaling. Have you always journaled?
Yeah. So the story behind that is I was at a 12-step meeting as a teenager because I am a recovering alcoholic. And I was sitting next to this woman named Janet, and she's like, "This is how you write in a God journal." And she gave me a few journal prompts, and I started doing it. I started getting mental relief and learning a lot about life and myself. And then I added a few journal prompts down the road. And I've been doing this journal practice either in the morning or at night, or sometimes I do it at lunch. If I wake up late, it's okay as long as I do it. It is something I've been doing for 30 years. And it has transformed my life from negative to positive, from fear-based thinking to abundance-based thinking. And the journal prompts are really simple, but they help me reframe my day from being a victim to going to victor and really celebrating my wins, learning from other people around me when they win, and just being grateful. And there's something that I have on the abundance journal that nobody else does, and it's called a surrender list. Everybody does a gratitude list. I also have a journal prompt about a surrender list because I tend to be in anxiety. So if I can get all the things out of my brain onto the paper that I feel anxious about, that frees up my brain for happiness and abundance and joy. So it's a really great abundance journal, and I'm actually going to give that as a gift to your listeners.
Oh,
So,
why, thank you.
yeah, you're so welcome. So it'll be in my Linktree link, and
Okay.
you can just share that with your listeners because it's been such a valuable tool for me. I definitely want them to have it too.
Thank you. Yeah, I discovered journaling, I don't know, only a few years ago. Something I was anxious over. Just the idea of it gave me anxiety. Like I kind of felt like I'm an A student. Is someone going to be looking over my shoulder, grading me? I'm not doing it correctly. I'm not answering it the way I'm supposed to. All of those things. And when I finally was able to let go of that and just kind of really forced myself and realized there is no right or wrong. This is for you. Nobody else is going to see it. Write whatever you want. Write the same word over and over again. It doesn't make a difference. And in the beginning, it was tough, but sticking with it really opened my eyes. And that actually, I believe, allowed me to realize I can write a book. It wasn't something that I had ever dreamt of. And English or literature, all of those things. I was a math girl. It was whatever it was. I can't remember if it's right side or left side of the brain. I felt like I didn't have anything on that creative half of my brain and would never even consider writing. And it really was journaling that made me realize, well, why not? Anybody can write. It doesn't have to meet some specific standard that I was envisioning in my mind. And it's amazing how we just put those handcuffs, limiting beliefs on ourselves with these stories that we tell ourselves. So I love that you are giving that to my listeners for free because I encourage everyone, if you don't have a practice, just give it a try and stick with it. I think it did probably take me 3 to 4 weeks of really telling myself I was doing it because I was doing it along with a mindset 12-week program. And like I said, I was hooked. And then when I found freeform journaling, which staring at a blank piece of paper was also anxiety producing. But once I put my pen down and really literally started with what they told me, I don't know what to write in this journal. And the next thing you knew, 5 pages, and 20 minutes later, I looked up, my hand was hurting, and I couldn't even believe what I had written. I didn't even know that all of that was in my head. So such a great, great tool. So let me ask you, so you do that in the morning and that sets you up. Do you have any specific practices that you then do during the day to keep yourself on track? Or you say you set your goals in the beginning of the year in all 7 areas. What do you do then on a regular basis to make sure that you're on track to attain them?
I write them on a note card. So each of the 7 areas, you get 3 affirmations. And this is actually a free workshop that I do every January. If you're listening to this, be sure you get on my email list so you can get an invitation. So I have like 21 affirmations and they're all on note cards. And I just look at them once or twice a day. And when I look at them, I visualize myself just quickly. I don't like stop. I just, as I read them, I visualize myself experiencing whatever it is that I intend. And it's a practice that takes maybe 3 minutes and it helps me stay on track and stay very aware of my goals. And when I look back on this practice, doing it year in and year out, I haven't achieved everything on my note cards, but I would say like maybe 7 or 80%. So that's pretty good. And a lot of the goals get carried on to the next year. They're longer term and that's okay.
Absolutely. So I've got to ask you, I see that you use a term called elegant warrior.
Yeah.
So love that. What does that possibly mean?
Well, elegant means feminine, not
Mhm.
putting out too much effort. And that is why I call myself the magnetic abundance mentor, because when you have your life aligned in these 7 areas, you're not struggling, you're not pushing yourself to burnout and exhaustion. And that is very elegant to have people be magnetized to you. The warrior part means just because you are in your feminine energy, it doesn't mean you can just sit at home and eat bonbons and watch Netflix and achieve your goals. So, warrior means working out hard, planning your day to take action toward your goals and dreams. And when you are in action, being very focused and really intentional in taking action toward your goals, not being distracted. I think we are in a society that has intention deficit disorder, not attention, but there's no drug. You can't take a drug for intention deficit disorder. You just have to learn how to discipline your mind. And I am a huge believer of the Pomodoro method, which is 25 minutes of focused action with a 5-minute break. And that helps me get through warrior-like actions that sometimes are not the most fun to do, but are necessary when you're building a business.
Absolutely. And so now, are you a full-time coach? Have you left your
I
sales job?
I am not. I believe in multiple streams of income. I currently have 5, and they are one of them I've been doing for 20 years. I work at a kids acting school. And I'm the director of admissions. I love it because I don't have kids and I love the performing arts. I actually moved to LA 22 years ago to pursue my dream of being an actress.
Oh,
And I had small parts on really big shows like Friends, CSI, and 24, just to name a few. So I have the kids acting school. I have my coaching and my podcast that kind of goes together. Then I also represent a health and wellness company where I promote collagen for fat loss and anti-aging. And the link to learn more about that is also in my link tree. And then I own real estate. That's the 4th income stream. I have several properties. And then the 5th one is something that I totally gave up on. And I recently manifested a new talent agent for acting and modeling. So this is something that just came to me, and there's been a big acting strike ever since I signed with my agent. There's been a strike. So
yes.
nothing has happened and the strike just ended this week. So I'm excited to see if that will be a fifth income stream.
Oh, that's wonderful. What made you stop acting prior?
I just felt like I wasn't getting momentum. I wasn't getting auditions. I wasn't getting jobs. And they say that life begins after you give up your first dream. And it had been a childhood dream of mine. And I gave it like a good 20 years. And I was like, all right, 20 years is a good run at this. And nothing's really happening. And I don't believe in forcing things that are just not happening, and it didn't really light me up to take acting classes anymore and to keep, like, maybe doing plays or community theaters. It just didn't excite me, so I was like, "I'm gonna put my energy and effort into coaching and my podcast," and now it's so funny because all the actors are doing the same thing that we're doing right now.
Yes, I
They
know.
they all have podcasts. So now I feel like it's an equal playing field and you don't have to know the right person. You don't have to be like drop dead gorgeous or 25 years old or anything to have a successful podcast. And I'm so grateful for this platform of podcasting because it's giving me a chance to have an audience and express myself in a creative way without going through all the hoops and hurdles that acting makes you go through.
Yeah, I'm sure. I love that you're coming back to acting just like you came back to tennis. I,
Yeah.
yeah, I was a recreational tennis player in my 20s and 30s. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Only played doubles, but played 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow,
Uh,
that's very serious.
yes, I was. It was my life. It was my recreational life. It was my outside life that I enjoyed. And then I didn't get injured, but found out that I had a structural problem in my back that I needed spinal fusion surgery. And that the end of my tennis career. I tried to go back to it twice. And every time I went back, then I needed a hip replacement. Then the next time I needed the other hip replaced. And I said, okay, I think I'm supposed to be getting the message that tennis is no longer for me. And it was like, it was a grieving period.
Yeah.
That was my a big identity of who I was. That's where
Wow.
my social life was. That was what I was doing outside of work. And this is before I had children. And yeah, it was super hard trying to get into the whole pickleball thing. And I enjoy
Yeah.
it, but I have not, certainly easier on the body. And having some of those tennis skills helps and hurts in different ways. Haven't gotten that addictive bug that other pickleballers seem to have. So
Yeah,
we'll
people
see.
love, love, love pickleball. I haven't played it yet, but everybody says it's so much fun, but I have not gotten into the craze. But yeah, people love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It is. It is fun. And at least it's good for those of us who are physically not able to play tennis anymore. So how did you said that your dad inspired you to write your book. Had you already developed, did you know your book was going to be about how to develop a side hustle? Had you always had a side hustle?
I didn't know what the book was going to be about. And I asked the universe to show me a sign. And I was sitting across the desk from my financial planner, and he's like, looking at my portfolio, my real estate and my stocks and also the job that I had at the kids acting school, and he's like, "I got to tell you, you're having your best financial year ever, yet this is the year that you lost your dad in your marriage and I don't know how you're so resilient. I think you should write a book and teach people how to be resilient when they face life tragedies." And when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, how am I having my best financial year ever during all this turmoil? And then I realized, oh, I have been practicing these 7 pillars, and they weren't called the 7 pillars of abundance. It was just something that I did every January with turning my goals into affirmations and reading my note cards. And I'm like, this is what I want to write about. And so I looked at these 7 areas. I'm like, what are some tips, tools, and strategies that people can do today to get results and get that area of their life from a level 1 to a level 10? And so that's what the book is about.
Phenomenal. Let me ask you, it seems overwhelming to me to think about having to focus on all 7 areas at the same time. Now you did list them in priority, in order of priority, you said. am I wrong? Is it too much? Is it better to have them be working on so many things at one time, or better to focus on just a few?
I think it's better to just focus on one area a week or one area of a month and get your practice down and then move on. I do have a free challenge for those who are ambitious, or actually it's $7, where you get 7 pillars of abundance in 7 days for $7. And it's again in my Linktree link. I will give you some quick ways to get that area to a level 10 in 7 days. So you get a quick 7-day reboot, reset in your life. But if you want to do that challenge, and once you get my different tools, you can just work on each one for like one pillar a week or one pillar a month. It really just depends on you. It's not like you have to do all 7 pillars in a day. Other than the spirituality and the fitness, all the others are just mental shifts, or like, for example, romantic. I believe for me, one date night a week works. And for social, I try to have one social visit a week with a girlfriend, stuff like that. It doesn't mean that you're doing like all 7 pillars every day. It's more of a just a framework to look at your life. And I really believe in planning your week on a Sunday night and thinking, okay, what am I doing this week for fitness? What am I doing this week for social? When can I schedule that date night? And when you just have this framework, it makes your life a lot more cohesive and you don't get obsessed about one thing.
Yeah. So you said earlier that one area that you were kind of lacking was the romance, and that you manifested your soulmate. So was it just affirmations? What action did you take, and how long did it take to happen?
Yeah, well, it used to make me so frustrated when people said love is gonna happen for you when you stop looking for it. And I'm
Yes.
like a hopeless romantic. I'm like, "Oh my god, how can you stop looking for love? This is like what makes life so beautiful. These people are crazy. I'm not gonna stop looking for it." So I did the opposite. I was on 5 dating sites. I hired a matchmaker. I went on so many dates when I got divorced, and none of the dates worked. I mean, I either liked them and they didn't like me, or they liked me and I didn't like them. We didn't have anything in common and it wasn't fun. So I decided to do a 90-day dating detox just to kind of focus on my book, because my book had been written and I had a big book launch planned. So the weekend before my book launch party, I went to a party thrown by the owner of my boutique gym. It was a backyard barbecue, and I invited everyone at that barbecue to my book launch party the following weekend. And my husband, Ben, showed up at the book lunch party, bought the book, and he asked me to sign it on a dinner date. And I was like, oh my God, these people are right. Like 6 weeks into my dating detox, I'm already getting asked out. And he said that I went on the date with like a little chip on my shoulder, like, oh gosh, here we go again.
Yeah.
And he wore me down and was very sweet. And we had a great conversation. We actually ended up closing the restaurant, and it was the smoothest, most just serene flowing courtship. And we got married on 12/21/21 because of love
Ah.
alignment. And now I teach women how to manifest their soulmate in midlife. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, because I'm like the same way I reverse engineered. How did I get through my divorce and my dad's passing and come out ahead? I did the same thing with my love life. Like, how did I go from divorced, jaded, cynical, bitter to married to the love of my life? And I reverse engineered it. And I have a program that teaches women exactly what to do to manifest their soulmate at any age.
So are you saying you didn't even realize what you were doing to manifest him, but now
I,
looking back, you're able to see the steps?
yeah, I didn't even realize what I was doing. And then I really thought about it and I broke it down into simple steps.
I love that. Love that. I mean, I can't even imagine, obviously, just not obviously, I shouldn't say that, as a more recent widow, that is not on my radar anytime soon. So
Well,
it's
that's
just hard.
understandable.
Yeah.
We've got a deal.
Oh,
But
no. Yeah. So it's hard to like, it's almost even hard for me to envision emotionally how that feels. And when you describe being on 5 different dating sites and going to all these things, and I've had friends who've done that, and it's painful as you're sitting there. And I can see how you could get disillusioned and throw your hands up and just say, forget it.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I guess I grew up, there were no dating sites, right? There was just starting to be those personal ads in the newspaper. And
Yeah.
I remember before I met my husband, my stepfather, who loved me but would always joke like, I need to get rid of you. He wanted to write me a personal ad because that was not my thing. So anyhow, that was back in the day, the personal ads. But even then they wrote to I don't remember how it worked. I think they wrote to a PO box or something, right? There was no email. It was quite an effort. So you weren't able to get that many dates in that short a period of time because there was no technology to facilitate it.
I
So
like that song about the dating ad. If you like pina coladas and getting
yes,
caught in the rain, that is a great song about a dating ad.
that is definitely true. So let's talk a little bit. Obviously, self care is very important to you. As you discussed, it's a non negotiable with your exercise and your other practices. Is it selfish? Does it take up a lot of your time? Are there other things that you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah, I like to say that self-care isn't selfish because when I feel full and self-care fills up my energy tank, then I can give more. I can be a better coach, a better wife, a better dog mommy, a better stepmom, a better sister, a better daughter. And when I'm depleted and burned out, I get irritable, I get cranky, I don't have as much to give. So women are taught to put everyone else first, to put your husband and your kids and your boss and your employees and your friends and put everyone else first. And if you say, no, I don't want to do that, or I'm going to the gym, or I'm going to have a spa day, people will call you selfish. And that is the worst thing that a woman could be called. So I decided to say, you know what? Selfish is a good thing because that means I'm taking care of myself and I have so much more to give. And my self-care practice is a lot of things. It's getting 7 or 8 hours sleep, taking a bubble bath with magnesium salt. It's massage. It is just stretching. It is just it's so much more than just working out. It's really just when I feel myself getting anxious, just slowing down, putting on a guided meditation. And there's all different kinds of ways to practice self-care that don't require a lot of money. Taking a bath, doing a guided meditation, taking a walk, these are all things that are very nourishing that don't cost a lot of money.
And even what you said earlier, you plan a date night, that's self care. You plan
Yeah.
some social event, that's taking care of yourself because we need that.
Yeah,
So
having girl time. Exactly, having girl time and socializing and just having fun that's not work related, that is also self-care.
completely, yes. I'm a family caregiver to 3 different members of my family for over 40 years, and you really are putting everybody else first at your own expense. And it took me a long time to realize that. But I think the big message is it's true. I mean, the old adage that we've all heard a million times about the oxygen mask, think about it because there are a huge number of caregivers who actually themselves require care because they become ill because they're not paying attention to themselves. They're so worried about everybody else that they don't have the time for themselves. And then they're, like you said, they're no good to anybody in whatever relation position that they have. I wanted to ask you, do you think that these things you mentioned that you had been in a 12-step program, earlier in your life. You think a lot of the things that you learned there were the foundation to create the seven pillars? Did that start you on your journey of coming up with being intentional, basically?
I think the first pillar, spirituality, a lot of that knowledge comes from what I learned in the 12 step because prior to being in a 12-step program, I was an atheist. So I really learned how to have a relationship with a power greater than myself, which is what the God journal, which is now called the abundance journal, is. The other things I have been studying a lot with great spiritual teachers, and a lot of them are either based in LA or come through LA. People like Michael Beckwith, Esther Hicks, Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, may they both rest in peace, Marianne Williamson. So these are spiritual thought leaders, and a lot of the emotional and the mindset stuff comes from what I've studied and learned from them. So I think what my teaching is, and I've also done a lot of sales training and a lot of business training. So I kind of marry the metaphysical with the practical business. And that is why my coaching is very different because there's a lot of business coaches out there and there's also a lot of spiritual coaches, and my teachings are a combination.
Yeah, that's great. So, what would you tell the listener who is intrigued by what you're saying, and how would they get started? Of course, hiring you as a coach is the best way, but if they just want to start and do a little something on their own to get their feet wet.
I would challenge them to download the abundance journal and try it for 10 days. If you write in that journal, in those journal prompts 10 days in a row, I think I know that you'll have some kind of a breakthrough and some kind of a shift, and something will surprise you and delight you that wasn't going to happen. So I would like to call that a miracle, a breakthrough, a manifestation, whatever you want to call it. Something's going to happen if you consistently do that for 10 days. If you do it for 21 days, that's what creates a habit. 90 days creates a lifestyle. So I would encourage you just to start for the first 10 days and see what happens. You can even do it to prove me wrong. And I think you're going to be surprised.
Absolutely agree. And again, thank you for that. And we'll have all the all the links in the show notes. So, Rebecca, as we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience that we haven't discussed already?
I think that one of my biggest keys to happiness and abundance is staying out of the past and the future. When I am in the past, I am usually in regret or beating myself up because I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I have learned to take the words would have, could have, and should have out of my vocabulary because those are words that I use to beat myself up. And when I'm in the future, I'm usually in anxiety. I wonder what's going to happen. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? What's it going to be like? How am I going to handle it? And when I find myself grounded in the present, I can be happy. So if I'm in my five senses, what am I feeling? What am I seeing? What am I tasting? What am I hearing? What am I listening to, smelling? These are all ways to ground myself in the present. And if I still can't ground myself in the present, I will just say, what is my next action? Like, what is my next right step? What is my next indicated action so that I can stay out of the future, stay out of the past, and just not be overwhelmed? Because I think overwhelm is such a thing right now. There's so much going on in the world. There's so much stimuli. There's so many beeps and dings, and it can get really overwhelming. So
That's
just take a breath and ask yourself, what is my next right action?
great advice. Great advice. And again, I'll have the link in the show notes, but why don't you let everyone know where's the best place to find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, Threads at Rebecca E. Whitman. You can also go to my website, RebeccaElizabethWhitman.com. That's Elizabeth with a Z. And then, of course, Debbie will share my link tree that has all the fun things that I've been talking about. The abundance journal, the 777 challenge, and I'm up to a lot of fun things that some of them are complimentary, like virtual retreats and fun things that you can participate in. And all of that is in my link tree.
Wonderful. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being a guest on the Maybe I Can podcast. Wonderful conversation. I appreciate you sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. And to everyone else, we'll see you next time.